everyone. In today's lesson, we're going to look at the language of toxic people and the things that they say. This is the kind of language we use when perhaps we don't realise it, but by saying these things we can start arguments and we can say these things and people will become angry with us. Another way of explaining toxic language is to say violent communication. I've shortened the word communication there. This was an area of study, you could say, by a man called Marshall Rosenberg. So if you're interested in the things I'm talking about in this lesson, you can go and search for the area of violent communication and you can learn more about it. Because the whole philosophy, I suppose, is how we can change the language that we use so that we can have more healthy communication with other people. And that way we don't have so many arguments and we have a more peaceful life at home. So I've got different kinds of violent communication and I'm going to go through them one by one, explaining as I go. First, I'll just read you the list of the different kinds of violent communication. Blaming others, threats, shoulds, labelling, black and white thinking, guilt tripping, diagnosing, emasculation, and uncalled for advice. I'll start with blaming. Blaming is when in your life you do not take any responsibility for your problems. Everything that happens to you is always somebody else's fault. So a person who blames other people would say something like, "You make me so angry." To use the verb make and to say, "You make me," is not taking responsibility for ourselves being angry. Another way we could say a similar thing is to say, "I am angry," but instead we blame it all on that person. It's not the thing that happened, it's because of you. Next we've got, "It's all your fault." Imagine something goes wrong. There's been a personal crisis going on in your family or something, and your dad says to you, "It's all your fault. Absolutely everything that went wrong here is because of you. All the blame goes on to you." Obviously, it's not a very nice thing to experience. We know that in life, things are rarely all just caused by one person, especially in a family. There's the way a family operates is you did this and I did this, so we can see it's more complicated in most situations than all being one person's fault. So this expression, saying that to someone, is usually an exaggeration as well, because if somebody says that, in most cases it's not true. It's not all their fault. Maybe some of it was. Next, we've got, "You're driving me crazy." This is something that perhaps a mother would say if she has some young children. Maybe she has a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 5-year-old, and they're all making lots of noise when they're playing. She can say, "Shut up! You're driving me crazy." And again, she's not taking responsibility for her own stress and her own feelings of craziness. She's blaming it on them. They are doing the action to her. They are driving her crazy. Let's look at threats now. A threat is when you let someone know if they do that, something bad will happen, or you will make something bad happen, or there will be a bad consequence if they do that thing. And the reason you give a threat is you want to stop that person doing it. So here's an example. If you don't get out of bed now, we're going without you. I imagine this situation, a teenage boy who doesn't want to wake up. It's Saturday morning, 11 o'clock. He's happy to sleep in till 1 p.m, maybe 2 p.m, and his parents want him to get up so he can go and see the grandparents with them. They might try and threaten him by saying, if you don't get out of bed now, we're going without you. In the situation I described, maybe he wouldn't care, maybe the teenage boy wouldn't care that much about that particular threat. Depends. Next example, if you don't eat your vegetables, you can't have dessert. A lot of parents say that to their kids as a sort of threat, but similar to a bribe, where they want the child to eat something healthy and they don't know how to get the child to eat the healthy thing, so they have to use other ways in their language, or they feel that they must use other ways in their language. They don't know how to communicate in a reasonable and peaceful way to get the child to eat vegetables, so they just feel a bit stressed and they say, if you don't eat your vegetables, you're not getting dessert. And kids who are very much motivated by sweet things, ice cream and things like that, they might decide to eat their vegetables so that they can get the ice cream after. Let's look at shoulds now. A should, we can make a sentence using should, and when we do that, we're telling other people how they should live their lives. We can also use shoulds on ourselves, which is one of the ways we can talk to ourselves in toxic ways. For example, we can say to someone, you should be sorry. You're telling them how they should be feeling, how they should be living their lives. You don't know what happened in their experience, but you're telling them how to feel. We've got, he should work harder at school. That's perhaps something a parent would say to their child who didn't get very good result. And then we've got, you should help me more around the house. Again, that's something that a parent might say to a child, or it could be a wife would say to a husband, or a husband would say to a wife. Instead of saying, can you help me out around the house by doing some more cleaning, which is a more peaceful way of saying that, you say, you should help me more around the house. And people don't like that kind of language because it feels more like a order, or you're telling them what to do. You're not so much giving them, you're not sharing how you feel. If you share how you feel in a peaceful way, they might want to help you more. Next, we've got labeling. Labeling is when you've decided in your head what another person is like. And we often do this with our family members. And sometimes family members keep the label that they had for you since when you were a child, and they don't change it. And you're 20 years old and they still label you the same. You're 30 years old, they still label you the same. And it can be frustrating, it can be upsetting, because if they do that to you, you feel like they don't really know you. They're just already decided who you are, but it could be that you've changed a lot since they gave you that label. So the problem with labeling is that you fix someone you put them in a box and you've decided how they are, and that's that. So here are some examples. Perhaps a parent says to a friend, talking about her child, "Oh, she's the clever one in the family." And perhaps that sounds like a compliment in a way. She's clever. Well, isn't it good to be clever? In one sense, yes, but if the other child is standing there next to her, that makes that other one feel not intelligent. And also, if you label someone as being that one, she's the clever one, that's like making that person the odd one out, the one that doesn't belong with the other people in the family. So it can be, if you're always doing that to a person, it can make them feel like they don't belong and being the odd one out. Another example, I imagine here a parent who is in a sense making an excuse for their child's behaviour. And by that, I'm not saying it's right or wrong for a child not wanting to interact with all adults and be confident and be like an extroverted child always talking. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm saying that when a parent feels that they have to comment on the behaviour of their child because they're not talking by saying something like, "Oh, he's shy," what they're doing there is, it's a bit like excusing, making an excuse, but also in that sense limiting their child by if you keep telling someone that they're shy, then in a way it will become true. Or perhaps someone was quiet then for other reasons, not because they were feeling shy, it's just they didn't have something to say. But then when your parent says, "Oh, you're shy," that can become true then, and it can make it harder for you to speak later. And the last one, Angela is a spoilt brat. That's a more obvious kind of labeling, which is negative. That's like, a brat is someone who is usually a young person who behaves in a very immature way. And we normally say it spoilt brat. You keep giving them toys, you keep spending money on them, but they're never happy and they don't have very good manners. So if I say Angela is a spoilt brat, that's me labeling her in the way as if that's the way she always behaves. There's nothing nice about her, and it's obviously it's not very kind words to say to someone or about someone. Maybe it's true, but if we always focus on the worst things about other people, we will not see the good sides of them ever. So coming up next, I've got more examples. Now we have black and white thinking. A person who is in the habit of doing black and white thinking always thinks that a situation is 100% good and great, or the worst thing ever in the world. And those kind of people tend to also really, really love someone or really, really hate someone, and it will swing in between. They don't really ever see the middle ground in the idea, in the situation. So black and white thinking, the way we show that in language is often by using the words always or never. Here's an example. "You're always late. Come on, hurry up." If we think about it, is that person late every single time they go somewhere? Perhaps not, probably not. I mean, I do know people who seem to be always late, but there must be exceptions sometimes when they're not. Another example here, "You never help me around the house." That would mean I do everything myself and you just use all my work and you just make me tired like the slave of washing and cleaning everything, where in reality it's probably true that they do something, right? Maybe they help washing the clothes or washing the dishes or something. So it's not very reasonable language. If you actually want someone to help you more, accusing them of never helping you, in many cases, will make the person not want to help you that day, at least that day, with the housework that you have to do. And here's another example. You always mess everything up. Now, that kind of thing, obviously it's not nice to hear if somebody says that about you, but I think that kind of thing is a really damaging thing for a child to hear. If a child, let's say you've got a clumsy child that spills drinks or breaks cups. They're not doing it on purpose, but they don't have very good coordination. If you say something like that to them, you're always dropping things, then they will lose their self-esteem really about things. So if you say you always mess everything up, not only do we have always, which means every time you do something, we also have everything. Every single thing you do is a big mess, is a disaster. So we have extra exaggeration in this example. Let's look now at guilt tripping, or another way to explain that is to say covert manipulation. If something is covert, it means it's not obvious. It's hard to see at first. You need advanced skills in understanding people to realize that they're playing with you or playing with your emotions. So let's look at these examples. Imagine the first image that comes into my head for that situation is a wife who's cooked dinner for her husband, and he comes in late, and he told her he was going to be back for dinner at 8 o'clock, but he didn't come back until 9:30. She might say, "There's no point eating this now. I'll put it in the bin." As if it's ruined. I did all that for you, and now it's cold. I left it here till you got back just so you could see it, but now I think it's best I put it in the bin. You obviously didn't want it anyway. The next example is, your mother is upset because you did badly in the exam. Let's imagine a situation where mum's a bit angry. Maybe she's doing some stomping around, closing cupboards loudly, huffing, that kind of thing. This is when Dad gets in on the action to blame the child in this situation for mum's stress and bad mood. So they're in a team here. Your mother is upset because you did badly in the exam. So even for, I suppose it depends on the exam, but even for relatively small things like a school test or whatever, some manipulators will decide to use that thing which they're not happy about, and they'll get stressed and they'll do things like slamming doors to show you they're angry or upset, rather than say, "Oh, I'm disappointed that you didn't try harder in the exam." They want to just show you that they're upset to, in a way, frighten you or guilt trip you to work harder next time. Another example is, "Oh, the poor dog hasn't been out today. Oh, don't you want to go for walkies? Poor doggy." Now, of course, what they really mean there, for another person to hear, is, "Oh, I would like you to take the dog for a walk now. I would like you to do it. Not me. I would like you to do it." So instead of saying that, they talk about the poor dog. the sad dog, the unfortunate dog, and they say, he hasn't been out today, because they want you to say, oh, right, I'll do it now. The next example is diagnosing. Diagnosing is when you consider yourself to be a psychologist and you know everything about that person, so you use it in your language of talking to them, either accusing them or excusing them for their behaviour, because you know so much about them and the thing that describes their personality or the thing that's wrong with them. So let's look at this example. Imagine you're in a relationship and there's problems in your relationship sometimes, and what you really want in your head is to be closer in that relationship or spend more time with that person. Perhaps you would accuse them of being a commitment-phobe. Commitment-phobe. This is the kind of person who needs a lot of space in the relationship, never wants to get serious, never wants to get married, never wants to have kids. Perhaps they change their mind about being in the relationship a lot. If you were frustrated with that person, and because you diagnose them to be this way because of a problem, you could say, this is all because you're a commitment-phobe. Next we've got, you're an actual sociopath. When we say actual here, it means like real, and it also is a way to emphasize calling someone a sociopath. It makes it stronger in that way. And it's also quite conversational to say actual. So what's a sociopath? Some of you might not know it. It's like a person who will tell any lie so that they can get what they want. They'll use other people so that they can get their own needs met. So for money, for sex, whatever it is that drives them, the sociopath has no conscience. So sociopaths tend to be either crazy people in prison, criminals, or very, very good sociopaths tend to be our politicians. And that's because they don't feel guilty about lying. And the next one here is, this is an example of a parent saying, having diagnosed their child, they say, you can't concentrate because of your ADHD. So there's a situation, perhaps the child is not really listening or not really doing its homework like the parent wants the child to. So what they say is they see that behaviour and they just make this whole excuse for it, and they label the child and tell the child how to behave. You can't, impossible for you, you can't concentrate because of your ADHD. Now, some of you might not know what that is. That stands for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And in places like the USA and the UK, and probably other Western countries as well, kids that are diagnosed to have this are often prescribed prescription medication such as Ritalin to help them concentrate in school. So these are kids that struggle to pay attention in school and are often more defiant with the teachers and get in more trouble at school. So a parent might, or the doctors might diagnose, I think in this situation, the doctors would diagnose the child or the teachers would diagnose the child as having ADHD, but then the parent takes that and they're always saying it. This is because you're ADHD. This is because you're ADHD. And in that way, there's no responsibility on the parent anymore for their parenting skills. It's not their fault, all the bad behaviour of the child. And also, it's not the fault of the child either. The child can't help it. The child has ADHD. Now let's look at emasculation. Emasculation means when a man is attacked in a way to make him less manly. So to take away his confidence in himself as a man. Here are some examples. You look so gay in that t-shirt. This would be said to someone who wasn't actually gay and didn't want to look as if they were gay by wearing a t-shirt that looked gay. Perhaps his girlfriend, if she wanted to get some power over him and feel bigger and make him feel bad, she might say that, you look so gay in that t-shirt. And then probably what he'll do, perhaps not right away in the next 5 minutes, but within the next hour or so, he'll change the t-shirt and he'll come out. Maybe not right away. Next example. This one is much more indirect. Let's say you're a girl and you're with your boyfriend and you say to him, there was a tall, handsome doctor in the hospital. You've just come out of the hospital. And this doctor was so handsome. He was at least 6'4". Gorgeous doctor. Meanwhile, your boyfriend next to you is not some tall, handsome, sporty kind of guy. So the fact that you talk about that other man as if he's the ultimate of all men is a way of making your boyfriend feel small and less manly. And finally, we get to uncalled for advice. This means when you go to someone and you give them advice that they didn't ask you for, it can be really annoying. This happens to me a lot being on YouTube. I think it happens to a lot of women on YouTube as well, because in the comments section, people think that they are helping you with the things that they write. They can tell you things about your technical situation. They can tell you about, men and women will leave these kinds of comments. They'll tell you about the clothes you're wearing. And one of the ones that sticks in my mind was that I'd given a presentation and the video is up about this presentation, and somebody left a comment saying about how I was dressed, you should wear pearls, a pearl necklace, so that people believe you more. And what they were trying to help me, I guess, but they thought that I wasn't smart enough and I didn't look right to give the presentation. But their advice was, if only I wear pearls, that way people will believe me, because you can't possibly believe the things that a woman is saying unless she's wearing pearls, and you can't take her seriously. So that's just one example of uncalled for advice, but it happens a lot. So we've got lots of examples of violent communication there, toxic things that people say. I think if we're honest with ourselves, we all say things like this sometimes. So what we need to do is just be conscious of that, try and reduce it if we want to, if we can, because these kind of things, when we say this to people, it's a way of making our relationships unhealthy and having more problems. So it's good for me, it's good for you if we become more aware of our language in these ways. What I've also got is a lesson on being passive aggressive. This is related to this kind of video. I think you should go and watch that one now. Thanks for watching and see you later. Bye.